Okay, so there are always those speakers who get caught in the black hole of AV problems, and apparently I was elected this time. But I'll go ahead and start talking while they hook up the computer anyway. The slides are mostly illustrations, and mostly I just talk. So I founded and run Astronomers Without Borders. The reason that's relevant here is that, and I'll show you why astronomy and why it's so important, but the whole purpose is to connect people from around the world and give people a chance to learn from each other. It's really all about diversity and equity, and astronomy is a place that does that. And we are doing some things specifically in the types of areas that we're talking about here at this conference. Also, well, that got up quicker than I expected, so here we are. Let me think about if there's any private stuff in there that I don't want to, but yeah, probably could. Okay, so I know. Okay. So the question, why astronomy? And this is what I was starting to get into. There are things that are universal or seem to be universal through all cultures, like we all eat food, so we can connect through that, but the food's not the same. We all have language, but it's not the same. There are many different things, but when we look up at the sky, this is something that truly is universal and is the same everywhere. So when I am in some other country halfway around the world, say staying in a friend's house in Tehran, the sky is exactly the same there as it is at my home in Southern California. And it's also something that everybody is interested in, which makes it very useful as far as that goes. When we look up, we see where we are in the universe. It's something that connects us all because it's really, truly borderless, and people who practice this do get the feeling that we're all on one little planet together. We're all looking at the same thing. It's like being on spaceship Earth as crew members, but we're looking out of different windows, just like any other craft. And it does reach everybody. There isn't any place in society, regardless of how you want to divide people up into groups, that it doesn't touch in some way. I'm going to show a few pictures just to illustrate that first. This could be anywhere on the planet. Happens to be in the central desert of Iran. But we see things similar over Yosemite Valley, from Mauna Kea in Hawaii, the observatories, the same Milky Way in a wide panorama on Easter Island. And there's a very similar view. It just happens to be over in Iguazu Falls in eastern South America. Or when we look at the moon, for example. Now, nobody claims the moon for their own. Everybody sees it where they happen to be, whether it's they see it rising over the Taj Mahal or the Parthenon in Greece, or a building in central Iran, or rising above the skyline of Boston. It's the same object, and when you look at that, you can't help but realize everybody is doing the same thing, looking at the same thing. We use it for outreach as well, and this gets a little bit more into the purpose of this, this conference here. There are people everywhere around the world doing this, and I know many who are very interested in astronomy for the disabled and so on, and such as Lorraine Grice, who just walked in, who has been big in this for a very long time. And amateur astronomers want to share their passion and that perspective that they get, because the sky is for all of us. And this is a very common theme in astronomy. The sky is for everyone. And it's not disabled versus non-disabled, or minorities versus the majority population, or gender, or something like that. It's just everyone. There isn't, it isn't a question of either or. It's just universal. And quickly, to demonstrate some of that, these are actually from a project we ran in International Year of Astronomy 10 years ago, called 100 Hours of Astronomy, where we had a probably 1 million people look through telescopes in one night all around the world. In Bangladesh, in Kurdistan and Iraq, I don't remember what country that is. This one's Nepal, in India and Iran, and either Bolivia or Peru. People take their telescope out and share whatever they can with other people. It's just what they love to do. If it's one person or a gigantic star party in Argentina in this case, you find it in the Sahara in Morocco, groups in Pakistan, young people in Philippines, in Oman, and for those of you, and I'm sorry to describe for those who can't see it, the look on the face of a young boy looking through a solar telescope and seeing the surface of the sun through a special filter for the first time. This is why people do it, this look of, wow, that's amazing. And it's the same look you'd find anywhere. So this child could be anywhere on Earth. Happens to be Romania. Romania. Now, for science literacy, and this gets closer to what I'm going to talk about in general, astronomy is a gateway science. You can say that about a lot of things, but in this case, astronomy touches on just about everything in STEM. All of the sciences, if you're a biologist, where there's astrobiology, there's geology as far as other planets, there's chemistry and physics, technology. Yeah, if you know anything about the big telescopes and the frontiers of this, I mean, everybody's seen first images from a black hole and things like that. Bleeding edge of technology and engineering at levels that are hard to imagine. And of course, mathematics. If you love astronomy and don't like mathematics, you might want to keep it as a hobby, which is why I made a living in another field. And these things fascinate everybody. So I have to read the latest press releases on everything that comes out because I know I'm going to get questions about it. For diversity and inclusion. So this is what I mean by it really touches on everything. And this is not a question of just physically disabled in some way. There are many different challenges. Physically challenged, of course, minority populations that do not get equal access to schools, isolated people in rural areas, and those who are just generally excluded, whether intentionally or not. For example, we have one program called Telescopes to Tanzania that works in remote areas of Tanzania using astronomy to train the teachers to do STEM. If you want to be a scientist in these communities, you have to go somewhere else. There isn't just a group excluded from STEM. No, there isn't any STEM. The teachers have no training in sciences. They've never touched a computer. So this is something where, despite the fact that they don't have the physics labs and the chem labs and everything, but if they go outside at night, they got a way better astronomy lab than you will have here in the middle of this campus with all lights on at night. So it's accessible in a way that other things really are not. Let's give some examples. This is a group that is sort of unofficially made itself a chapter, something we're moving towards, which I encourage, even though it's not under our control because they're doing good stuff. Women and Girls Astronomy Camp. This is in Nigeria. The person who started this is a chief scientist at the Nigerian Space Agency. They have 5 satellites in space for mostly for defense purposes and communications. And she and the others, especially the women, want to show girls there that they can be scientists if they want to. It just never occurred to them. It's not that they feel excluded. It just wasn't on the menu. It's not an option as far as they're concerned. Now, when you talk about gender issues, if you're a young girl in northeastern Nigeria, you could be kidnapped by Boko Haram and become a slave. So these are big gender issues, when you look at things that way. So that's a fantastic program there. The IDP is internally displaced persons. These are refugees, a camp in northern Nigeria, probably come from South Sudan, I'm not sure. And so you can see some of the images of the girls taking part in these things. Here are some others. We've helped with little things like the eclipse glasses or the solar viewing glasses so they can look at the sun. This by itself is an amazing thing. We had one classroom that came to where the people doing telescopes to Tanzania had come with these eclipse glasses in order to allow students to see the sun for an eclipse that was coming up. And they traveled to see them, put on the glasses and said, now we're scientists too. And so it has an impact. These little things, when you're talking about from 0 to very, very little, it's a big step. And it can change attitudes. Now, speaking of eclipses, of course, if you don't know about the eclipse in the U.S., in 2017, you were in a coma across the country. It was used for education in all kinds of ways. This is just an article in the National Science Teachers Association magazine, one of a series about how to use eclipses to teach. It's a teachable opportunity. And we had this program here, which uses a small spectroscope to allow, what happened there? Yeah, to study all different types of sciences. So the sunlight, if you want to see chlorophyll in leaves, you can get that from the spectrum that's reflected off in many different things. So there are a whole lot of opportunities here. This is not something that is needed so much in the wealthy schools that already have things like this. This was an opportunity to bring STEM into other classrooms that are more, that have less access to these things. And in order to share what we have in the U.S., this is one example that came from that, we had a program where we announced, okay, we're going to take in eclipse glasses from those people who aren't using them anymore after the eclipse. We've done this to send eclipse glasses to other places to crowdfund for them and so on. Well, it went nuts. I mean, it went viral. We had tens of millions of eyes on this, and people were writing in saying, we want to collect glasses for you. How do we do that? So we had to scramble and figure out how to do that. We never advertised collect glasses for us, but we got 1,000 places around the country who wanted to do it. We thought we might get 50,000 glasses in, and we got 3 million. So this has practically sunk the organization because we're struggling to get these things out to the other places, such as South America, where tens of thousands have gone already for the eclipse that is happening on July 2nd. What is that? Tuesday. And there are big preparations there. We have an annular eclipse. The sun's not quite covered by the moon, coming up in Asia that will be seen by probably 3 billion people. And then there are 2 more eclipses after that. So we have glasses that are going to be shipped out to all these. And this is a huge opportunity that was very well taken advantage of here. This is a case of the laboratory experiment coming to the schools. It's crossing over, it's everywhere, and they need very little in order to make a STEM experience out of that. And you don't know how many of these students are going to be inspired by that. We had the question earlier, what experience in science in this room in the earlier session, what experience in science when you were in grade school inspired you? And this is a common one. How many kids are going to have that opportunity? Well, we've done some other things as well to bring opportunities to others. In this case, it's actually I think it was a girls' school in Kenya. It's actually in a poor suburb of Nairobi. So this is the kind of place where, you know, you have to walk through the mud to get to the classroom. There may not be a floor on it. But we had somebody go in there and raise funds for that. After the hurricanes in Puerto Rico, this is one school's what it looked like, but we raised money and sent 20 telescopes to classrooms there where they're working with the Astronomical Society in Puerto Rico and others to bring this into the classroom in a more formal way. Many opportunities there. Now, you know, as far as astronomy goes, I said it touches just about everything, and this to me is a very big part of diversity in STEM, which is art. This is not something I envisioned, but something that others have brought into it. This painting here of what it might look like to be on, looks like it must be Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. It was actually painted by a very famous planetary scientist whose book I used in college a long time ago. We get huge participation during Global Astronomy Month, which is our follow-up to 100 Hours of Astronomy, from kids around the world. This is just the reason this turns out to be so important, well, turns out to be for me because I wasn't aware, is that this is a way that different people see science. And I'll show some pictures here too of people who really illustrate that. But it's not just a matter of those who can't physically do something or may have difficulties in some other way, but who just happen to see the world, the universe, in a different way. And this bridges that and brings more people into it. And there are many artists who do STEM, and there are scientists who do art. And they're just two different ways of seeing the same thing. Well, okay, this one, and then I'll get onto some very specific things. This one actually is performance art. It happens to be a picture of Charles Duke, who walked on the moon in, I think it was Apollo 14. He left that picture on the left on the surface of the moon, and he took a picture of it. That's him and his family. And it's a famous picture and a famous thing he did, the picture on the moon's surface. Well, I happened to know him, and I wrote to him, and I said, will you give us a better picture of this? We're going to send it to the moon and bring it back. And that's what the one on the right is. It was encoded in a radio signal, sent up to the moon by one radio telescope, a small one, then received back here. And that's what happened to it. That actually is reflected off the moon. That's why the noise in there. It's from scattering on the surface of the moon. So this is yet another way that all of these things come together. Now, to be more specific, what I'm most familiar with is astronomy for the blind and visually impaired. Some of the things that we have done. Now, this is an example of programs going on where the blind or severely visually impaired want to understand what's going on up there. And you know, the interesting thing is when you see these pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope or from a spacecraft or something, you're seeing things that you can't see with your own eyes anyway. So in a sense, we're all in the same boat as far as this goes. If you look through a microscope, you're seeing a world that's hidden to the rest of us, or a telescope. So they here are using tactile models to see the rays of the sun coming into the Earth. I don't know exactly what the lesson here is, but I can tell you it looks like it's about how the Earth revolves around the sun and why we go through seasons and why the sun appears to move north and south. It's not because the Earth is farther away. In fact, in our winter, the Earth is closer to the sun than during our summer. The reason is that tilt that they have there, and those red lines represent the northern and southern limits of the sun's motion in the sky and the equator. So they are getting a hands-on lesson in this, and it is not something that most people understand. I think probably if I ask, I won't ask for a show of hands because I don't want to make people admit they didn't know that. Nobody likes to do that. But most people that I have dealt with do not know why the Earth goes through seasons like this. Another picture of the same thing. And these are ways that these people will know more than most of you do about exactly what's going on here. Here is another example. This one's in India. What they have there is a model of a constellation. The balls, the little balls on there are the stars. Constellations are not groupings of stars. They look like they make up a picture, but they're not at the same distance. They're not in the same place. This is something that shows that in 3D, so you can get that. You can't see it very well here, but the length of the sticks is different with each one of those. So this is what a 2D constellation looks like in 3D. It's a good lesson for everybody. It works just as well for the visually impaired. This is one we had some hand in and continue to. And Anna actually, I think, has used this here on, and maybe we'll get to see it later tonight, I'm not sure. This is called The Sky in Your Hands. This is a planetarium program for the blind and visually impaired. There are constellations shown on the dome here. In fact, there doesn't need to be anything visual here because there is a narration which is recorded, and the domes that they have in their hands, on their laps, have tactile stars, little bumps in constellations. So they're following along exactly the same as somebody who is visually impaired, who is not visually impaired, a sighted person, who's following along with a little arrow that flies around in the universe and points to where you're supposed to be looking. They have little guides on there. Now, one of the things that I really like about this, what I always find fascinating is the perspective of people, their experiences that I have not had the experience with. And that's a theme of some of the things I've already heard, is that people just don't realize how difficult it is in society for people that have various disabilities, because people just don't understand what it is. What I like with things like this is to have sighted people as well. You don't have to have any visuals, or if there are really visuals, blindfold them. And they can do exactly the same thing and learn what the experience is like with others. I think that's particularly useful to the understanding and the empathy that comes from it. Not that people don't care, but they just don't understand. Simple accessibility, this is something that very few do, which is to have a telescope which is fitted in such a way that the people in wheelchairs can get to it. There's another slide I don't have in here that shows a very, very long eyepiece attachment there, so people don't have to get up close to the telescope. Because look, this is an outreach telescope, not an observatory. If it's an observatory, it's on a pier, it's way up in the air, you have to go up the stairs. That's a barrier. Here you have a tripod. How do you get a wheelchair in close to there? So they've made it so that they can do that, and there are many efforts like that. The problem with all these efforts is they're very small individual efforts. People figure it out on their own. And that's the main thing that I think we have the ability to change. There are some people here, in addition to me, including Anna, who are on this International Astronomical Union's working group for astronomy for equity and inclusion. Now, the IAU has done some great stuff in using astronomy for development. I put these things into the same place. To me, it doesn't matter why you have limited access. Everybody should have the opportunity to do these things, and astronomy is the opportunity for it. Now, there are activities and resources there contributed by people all around the world, but it's activities and resources that somebody has to find. And so what we really need to do is to get these things together in one place, and that's what we plan to do. We have a worldwide community of astronomy enthusiasts, which could be amateur astronomers, lecturers, planetariums, and so on. In every country, they're everywhere. And we have that access now, and the purpose is to bring awareness. Because I can tell you that I know people doing astronomy for the blind in the US, in India, in Brazil, in Iran, and I hear about it in other places. And they've all invented it themselves. There is interest, there is a passion, people want to do this, but only the most innovative and ambitious are going to find a way to do it on their own. So this is something I mentioned earlier, so it's really just largely the same things. Why does it do that? That it is really so many different things in STEM fields. Now, in doing outreach, I have, for example, 40 years ago, I ran a telescope at a major public observatory in Los Angeles, and they get 1 million visitors a year looking through that telescope, and people would come and say, it's looking through this telescope that inspired me to go into science. And they went into something else, which is probably a good idea because not many people get to make a living in astronomy, but it's what got them into it in the first place. So what we want to do, and this is, we call it open space. I think it was Anna who came up with that name, and it keeps changing on me. I don't know if I'm breathing too hard on it or what I'm doing. Okay, so, yeah, that's, okay, you can see it okay like that, right? This is the last slide, except for the ending slide. For diversity and inclusion of all kinds. So we have designed and want to create a community center where we can have hubs for different things in particular. This is, I'm learning about what I have been doing in a way, a community of practice, for those who know that term, where we can have everybody together in order to share everything that's going on and create programs which will get attention and get these resources out to everybody else. That's first, that's very important. We don't need people reinventing the wheel, and very few people will do that. But I know amateur astronomers around the world who will do this. I know in the Los Angeles area, one group that has observing through telescopes for the visually impaired, who can't see, they walk with a cane and so on, so their vision is very poor, but when you show them a high contrast object like the moon, they can see it. And it's an amazing experience for them to be able to do that. We need to connect these people around the world to be able to share things, the existing resources and ideas and so on, and awareness of everything. So, like I say, the interest, activity, and community exist. We just need to get them connected together, as we have done in many other things. The programs we do are based on astronomy around the world, and people take part in them by the many thousands. And there are other large efforts too, like Asteroid Day coming up. And as I said, the stars are for all, and our motto is one people, one sky. And that's something that turns out to have really caught on, because that's what astronomy brings you. And I can't think of another way to get people to feel they are in a space, no pun intended, where they are there with everyone else on the planet at the same time. So this is just a great opportunity that we have to be able to do this, and we're in a place now where we can do it, as long as somebody gives us enough money to do it. So I'll take checks, credit cards, whatever. So, and that's just the closing slide, which, this came to me at one point. We're all familiar with think globally, act locally. That was the idea about doing what you can in the local area, because you can't do everything on a global scale. But you know what? Now we have amateur astronomers and others who are doing things in their area, and we can connect them together in order to be able to accomplish things on a global scale. We have the technology for that now. So I like to turn that around, and I think I've left time for questions and so on, I hope. If not, I'll be around through both days. So thank you very much. And I have no idea where I am time-wise. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I am on, and I think Noreen sitting next to you is on Tom Madura's as well, I think. So Tom Madura, you'll be able to see some of these things from the experts, like Tom Madura does 3D models based on Hubble images and so on. There has been work on that, and it turns out that we don't all learn the same way, which should be no surprise to anybody at this conference. There are different ways to approach it, different perspectives. That's part of the point with the art and other ways of bringing sciences to people. So yes, there's one pretty famous astronomer who is blind, who's done some work on that as well, sonifying astronomical data to and then you know, at the IAU conference, which is every 3 years, she sets up something and has research scientists come in and view the data with that additional advantage. And as if I recall, that helps too. I'd love to talk to you about it. I mean, I think there are a lot of opportunities, and one of the problems with our organization, it's worldwide, so you know, everybody has a geographic focus, and we do too. It's Earth, but there aren't that many foundations for that. So, but we can develop things that would then be taken on to other countries. So I think that's something. It would require a team. I'm not the one to lead that. But I'd be interested in talking to you more. We met earlier, and hear what you have and what your ideas are. Yeah.
So it's a combination comment and questions. I'm a unicorn, and I'm part of the NASA Solar System Ambassadors at Program, and we're all volunteers. So hopefully, we were already connecting up with you. That would certainly be an opportunity for connection. And I was just part of a webinar from the Night Sky Network, which is another organization preparing to connect with. Specifically, I wanted to mention, and I work with arts, so I'd be thrilled to talk to you more about that.
Great.
Arts innovation and STEM. Please come to my talk tomorrow. Little plug, I have posters. But the comment is, have you done any outreach or connection with the UN NUSA? Because 2 years ago, they had a project that I got to be part of called Space for Women, and it was specifically focused on bringing not just astronomers, but a lot of different specialties, but we talk about sustainability goals that the UN has.
Yes.
And the NUSA, which is the Office for Outer Space Affairs. So and they're moving forward to continue to do things in that regard. And in fact, they're having a science and accessibility program. I think it's in October, which I think will be more.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually met the head of UNUSA. I've had contact on and off with them. The UN, you know, you have to hit a real pressure point to be able to even talk to them about anything. But UNUSA has been better than that. And I met a couple of the people that are going to have a nonprofit meeting that ended up not happening. I'm very interested in what you're talking about there because there's a lot of potential for that. Night Sky Network, if you know Andy Sherwood, she works for us, and she's in Night Sky Network. We work very closely with ASP, but because they have U.S. funding, you know, they work only in the U.S., but the people there are great. And also, many of the people that volunteer are solar system ambassadors. It's a small club. You know, it's the universe is the subject, and it's still a small club of people that take part in it. But yeah, anything with the UN. There's also a UNESCO World Heritage Sites is now finally, after more than probably 15 years of trying, is developing places of astronomical interest as well. That was a real coup that somebody persisted on. So the UN is great, but it's a bit like a fortress. So. Any other questions? I think we're close to out of time anyway. 3 minutes. Okay, one of the things that I actually was surprised I didn't have in here, I thought I did, was an astronaut named Nicole Stott. Nicole went to, you know Nicole, went to space I think 3 times. She was an engineer. And she was working at Kennedy Space Center, and after a while she said, working with the astronauts, I can do that. So she applied, she got in, she trained, went to space a few times. She also happens to be an artist. And she calls herself the astronomical artist. And she's really good, too. I really love some of her work. She does things like, talk about a change in perspective. She takes photographs of things from the space shuttle, and she paints them. And I'm a photographer, and I've been looking at, since, Sputnik, well, after Sputnik, the first photographs taken from space. But I prefer her paintings of them because they have the feeling of what she's seeing there. It takes you into it more. And she and I have had some great conversations. She was our Astro Artist of the Month one time a while ago. And we've had some great conversations, and we both feel that science and art are just two different ways of seeing the world. They're not different. People think it's left brain, right brain. There is a connection. And I think this is true in the broader perspective, that we all have our own way of seeing things, our own way of learning things, our own experiences, and they all have to be included, which is why, to me, diversity and inclusion includes the whole population, for whatever reason. Stott, S-T-O-T-T. And they are, and the astronaut, one other thing that with her reminds me, there is an effect called the overview effect. It was what many astronauts experience when they go to space and look down on the Earth. It's not just that there are no borders, it's just that they see the Earth as a place in space. That borders have nothing to do with a planet. There are no borders on Mars either. And if you were on Mars and you divided it up, you'd see Mars as having borders, but then when you come back to Earth and look through a telescope, it's just a single place. And the overview effect, it really has a big emotional impact and a perspective shift for the astronauts. Not all, but most. And to me, astronomy is the overview effect for the rest of us, for the reasons that I explained here, and Nicole is part of that effort as well. So. All right, thank you very much.